The birth of Islam marks the origin and beginning of a divine message that transformed Arabia and the world, emerging during a time known as the Jahiliyyah period when pre-Islamic Arabia was dominated by tribal society, idolatry, and moral injustice. Mecca, home to the Kaaba, was the center of Arab life, and the Quraysh tribe, especially Banu Hashim, played a key role in its society. Prophet Muhammad was born the year of the elephant to Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib and Amina bint Wahb, and was raised under the care of his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. Known for his honesty and trustworthiness and called Al-Amin, he lived in a society filled with pagan worship until, at the age of 40, he received the first divine revelation in the cave of Hira on Mount Jabal al-Nur through Angel Jibreel, beginning with Surah Al-Alaq and the command Iqra. This marked the start of prophethood, the revelation of the Quran, and the call to Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. The message of Islam emphasized monotheism, justice, equality, mercy, and moral reform, calling people away from idol worship toward submission to Allah alone. Early preaching began secretly, and the first Muslims included Khadija bint Khuwaylid, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu Bakr Siddiq, and Zayd ibn Haritha, forming the foundation of the early Muslim community. As Islam spread, the Quraysh opposed it fiercely, leading to persecution, torture, and hardship for believers such as Bilal ibn Rabah and the martyrdom of Sumayya. Yet the early Muslims remained patient and steadfast in faith. Islam stood against oppression, racism, and injustice, promoting equality between rich and poor, Arab and non-Arab, black and white, while establishing strong moral values, compassion, and human rights, including the rights of women, orphans, and the poor. The Meccan revelations focused on belief in Allah, angels, prophets, divine books, destiny, the day of judgment, accountability, and the reality of the hereafter, laying the foundation. As the message of Islam continued to grow, the early believers developed an unshakable sense of purpose, understanding that faith was more valuable than wealth, power, or social status. Islam reshaped the worldview of its followers by teaching that the true purpose of life is to worship Allah alone and reject all false gods, replacing ignorance with divine guidance. The Quran described itself as light, mercy, and wisdom, offering solutions to moral decay and spiritual darkness while emphasizing Allah's justice, mercy, and absolute authority. The Prophet Muhammad emerged not only as a messenger, but also as a reformer, leader, and mercy to mankind, guiding people with patience, courage, and wisdom. Early Muslims showed extraordinary sacrifice and steadfastness, choosing truth over comfort and faith over fear, which laid the groundwork for a strong and united Muslim ummah. Islam challenged tribal arrogance and social exploitation by establishing unity and equality as core principles, ending centuries of injustice and discrimination. The foundations of Islamic law and ethics were established through divine revelation, forming a justice-based system that protected human dignity and promoted accountability. Education, knowledge, and moral discipline became central to Islamic life, encouraging reflection, literacy, and spiritual growth. The Quran was carefully preserved through memorization and oral tradition, ensuring the purity of the final divine message. Islam presented itself as the seal of all previous revelations, confirming earlier prophets while delivering a universal call for humanity to live by truth, justice, peace, and submission to Allah. Through this spiritual revolution, Arabia was transformed into a faith-centered society governed by moral values, social justice, and divine law, marking the continuation of Islamic history and the solidification of a civilization rooted in belief, ethics, and compassion. As Islam continued to take root, its teachings began to reshape not only individual hearts, but the structure of society itself, replacing systems built on power and lineage with values based on faith, accountability, and moral responsibility. The Quran repeatedly reminded humanity of the temporary nature of worldly life and the certainty of the hereafter, encouraging people to live with honesty, humility, and consciousness of Allah. Early Islamic teachings emphasized patience during hardship, trust in divine wisdom, and reliance on Allah in times of struggle, strengthening the spiritual resilience of believers. The Prophet Muhammad guided his followers with wisdom and mercy, teaching them to respond to hostility with patience and to injustice with integrity. Islam established a balance between spiritual devotion and social responsibility, promoting lawful earning, ethical conduct, and compassion toward others. Through prayer, charity, and remembrance of Allah, Muslims developed a strong connection with their Creator while remaining active contributors to society. The message of Islam united diverse tribes and backgrounds under one faith, creating a shared identity that transcended race, language, and social class. This unity laid the foundation for stable leadership, ethical governance, and collective responsibility. Islam also placed great emphasis on intention, teaching that sincerity of heart is central to faith and that actions are judged by purpose. As the Quran continued to be revealed, it refined moral character, corrected social wrongs, and guided believers toward justice, patience, and truth. In this way, the birth and early development of Islam represented not merely the emergence of a religion, but the rise of a comprehensive way of life that harmonized belief, worship, character, and social order, preparing the Muslim community for future growth and responsibility in the world. With the continued revelation of the Quran, Islam gradually refined the character of its followers and established clear moral boundaries that distinguish truth from falsehood, justice from oppression, and guidance from misguidance. The early Muslims learned that strength was not measured by dominance or wealth, but by patience, humility, and obedience to Allah. The Prophet Muhammad cultivated a community grounded in sincerity, mutual care, and moral discipline, encouraging believers to support one another through compassion and shared responsibility. Islam emphasized consultation, fairness, and accountability, laying the foundations for ethical leadership and governance rooted in divine guidance rather than personal desire. The teachings of Islam promoted balance in all aspects of life, guiding believers to fulfill their duties to Allah while honoring the rights of family, neighbors, and society. Through consistent worship, ethical conduct, and trust in Allah, the Muslim community developed resilience in the face of hardship and opposition. Islam's call challenged entrenched systems of exploitation and injustice, replacing them with principles of mercy, equality, and social justice. As faith deepened, believers internalized the Quranic message, allowing it to shape their behavior, intentions, and worldview. In this manner, the birth of Islam evolved into a powerful moral and spiritual movement, preparing the community for the coming stages of expansion, responsibility, and leadership, while firmly establishing Islam as a complete and timeless way of life for humanity. As the early Muslim community matured, the teachings of Islam began to instill a deep sense of responsibility, discipline, and moral awareness in every aspect of life, encouraging believers to act with integrity both in public and private. The Quran emphasized that true success lies not in worldly dominance, but in righteousness, patience, and steadfast faith, shaping individuals who were conscious of accountability before Allah. The Prophet Muhammad trained his followers to endure hardship with dignity, to speak truth even when difficult, and to uphold justice without bias. Islam nurtured a culture of learning, reflection, and wisdom, urging believers to observe the world, seek knowledge, and recognize the signs of Allah in creation. Social bonds were strengthened through compassion, charity, and mutual support, ensuring that no individual was neglected or oppressed. Islam's ethical framework promoted honesty in trade, kindness in relationships, and mercy in judgment, gradually transforming society from within. The early believers learned that reform begins with the purification of the heart, leading to the correction of behavior and the establishment of justice. Through these principles, Islam created a strong foundation for unity, moral leadership, and spiritual growth, allowing the faith to move forward with clarity, purpose, and divine guidance as it prepared the Muslim community for its historic role in shaping human civilization. As the message of Islam became firmly rooted in the hearts of believers, it fostered a deep sense of self-accountability and consciousness of Allah, shaping individuals who measured their actions by faith rather than social pressure. The Quran consistently reminded people that honor and dignity come through righteousness, not lineage or status, reinforcing Islam's mission to dismantle arrogance and tribal superiority. Under the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad, the Muslim community learned to face challenges with wisdom, patience, and trust in divine support. Islam encouraged moderation, balance, and responsibility, teaching believers to avoid extremes while remaining firm upon truth. The emphasis on sincere intention strengthened personal character, while collective worship and charity reinforced unity and compassion within society. Islam's teachings addressed both spiritual and practical aspects of life, offering guidance in personal conduct, family relations, and social dealings. Through adherence to moral values and ethical principles, early Muslims developed resilience and clarity of purpose. In this way, the birth and early development of Islam continued to shape a community grounded in faith, justice, humility, and service to humanity, ensuring that the message would endure beyond its earliest days as a guiding force for generations to come. As Islam continued to guide the hearts and minds of its followers, it cultivated a strong sense of responsibility toward both Allah and humanity, reminding believers that faith is reflected through actions and character. The Quran encouraged reflection, patience, and gratitude, teaching that every hardship carries wisdom and every blessing requires humility. The Prophet Muhammad nurtured a community built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect, where leadership was understood as service rather than dominance. Islam emphasized the protection of life, honor, and property, establishing principles that safeguarded human dignity and social harmony. Believers were taught to control anger, forgive others, and respond to wrongdoing with justice rather than revenge. Through continuous moral training, the early Muslim society developed emotional strength and ethical clarity. Islam's message fostered hope, resilience, and inner peace, offering spiritual stability in an uncertain world. By harmonizing worship, morality, and social responsibility, the birth of Islam evolved into a comprehensive system that guided individuals and communities toward righteousness, balance, and long-lasting reform, ensuring the survival and strength of the Muslim Ummah for generations ahead. As the foundations of Islam became firmly established, the early Muslim community developed a deep sense of moral awareness that influenced every aspect of daily life, from personal behavior to social responsibility. The Quran consistently emphasized truthfulness, patience, and trust in Allah, teaching believers to remain steadfast during trials and grateful during ease. The Prophet Muhammad encouraged kindness, humility, and sincerity, shaping individuals whose character reflected their faith. Islam promoted justice without oppression, mercy without weakness, and discipline without harshness, creating a balanced and ethical society. The emphasis on brotherhood strengthened social bonds, ensuring care for the weak, the poor, and the marginalized. Through regular prayer, charity, and remembrance of Allah, believers maintained spiritual focus while actively contributing to the welfare of society. Islam taught that true success lies in moral integrity and closeness to Allah rather than material gain. In this way, the birth of Islam continued to unfold as a transformative force that refined character, strengthened communities, and provided lasting guidance for humanity through faith, ethics, and compassion.
As Islam continued to strengthen its presence, the teachings of the Quran cultivated a sense of accountability that encouraged believers to live with purpose, discipline, and awareness of Allah in every action. The early Muslim community learned that faith was not limited to rituals alone, but was reflected in honesty, patience, and justice in daily life. The Prophet Muhammad emphasized good character as the true measure of belief, guiding people to act with mercy, fairness, and humility. Islam fostered a deep sense of social responsibility, urging care for neighbors, travelers, and those in need while discouraging greed and exploitation. Through shared values and collective worship, believers developed unity and mutual trust, allowing society to function with harmony and cooperation. Islam's guidance addressed both individual and communal well-being, offering solutions to moral decay and social imbalance. As a result, the birth of Islam became the foundation of a civilization built upon faith, ethics, and compassion, shaping hearts and societies and preparing the Muslim Ummah for its future role in spreading justice and guidance across the world.
By the time Islam had firmly established itself among the early believers, it had transformed Arabia into a society guided by moral principles, spiritual devotion, and social justice. The Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad continued to refine character, strengthen faith, and unite diverse tribes under the banner of righteousness and submission to Allah. Islam emphasized that true honor is earned through integrity, compassion, and obedience to divine guidance rather than through wealth, status, or ancestry. The community learned to balance worship with ethical action, personal devotion with social responsibility, and spiritual growth with practical justice. Islam nurtured resilience in the face of trials, hope in times of hardship, and clarity of purpose in every decision. Through consistent teaching, moral example, and the preservation of divine revelation, the birth of Islam laid the foundation for a timeless civilization built upon faith, ethics, and unity. This formative period not only shaped the lives of its earliest followers, but also ensured that the message of Islam would endure, guide, and inspire generations across the world, establishing a complete and transformative way of life for humanity.